Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Paranormal Karen, funny too. Paranormal Karen, she's so spooky. Oh, and did I mention she's funny too? Yeah, cha-cha-cha.
Hey everybody, welcome to Paranormal Karen. I'm so excited about my guest today. I am going nuts on this TikTok. There are so many great people on TikTok. That's where I found today's guest. But I have to tell you, I am in heaven. I love Lori Hurley's art. I just drool over her art on Instagram, and she was painting these bottles, and I was like, oh my God, these are so beautiful. You have to make them incense burners. And she sent me 3 of them. I'm going to make a video. It's probably already up because I pay so far ahead, or I tape so far ahead. But go to Prayer Paintings. That is Lori, and I'm just so taken with her art. I can't even... I'm just thank you, Lori, so much. Lori Hurley Studio. I'm going to put a link in the show notes because I just love my podcast people. All right. So, LORLYNHURLEY Studio. Just check her out. She's fantastic. Okay, so today's guest I found on TikTok actually somebody sent me, Elwynn, someone sent me your TikTok about archangels, which sent me down a rabbit hole, and we're going to get to that. But thanks for coming on the podcast.
Oh, thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
So now, Elwynn, let's start with who you are and where are you from with that fabulous accent?
From England, but I moved around quite a lot, actually. I was born in Kent, and then moved over, spent a little bit of time in Wales, in the north, all over the place, really.
And now you're in Chicago.
Now I'm in Chicago. Yes.
There you go. It all ends in Chicago. So tell me now, how would you, of course, we can describe you as a witch because that's your Instagram, Elwynn The Witch. Yeah. How did you get started? Were you from, we always think in England, were you from a witchcrafty family? How did you get your beginning?
That's correct. I was, most of my young childhood, I was raised by my 2 aunts. Who were witches. One was is actually a fantastic clairvoyant, and the other a healer. But they did other things in between there, and it was very much something that was the norm from a very young age. Things like spirits, people coming and going from the house as well, and tarot, things like this. These were all very, very normal things growing up for me.
Fantastic. You never hear that about people, and it fascinates me. So it was probably, was it the whole thing was like kitchen witch, clairvoyant, like tarot? It just sounds fascinating.
There was. I remember there was a certain smell as well in the kitchen, because the kitchen had another room added to it at the back where all manner of herbal remedies would be kept for things and bottled for people, and the smell was a very strange smell of mixing things, but there's nothing like it, to be honest. It always takes me back, the smell of herbs drying and tinctures and things like that. But it was with me from the go, really.
Wow, that's really to be encouraged like that, because I know most mediums, I feel like they're stuck in families that think they're from the devil. Were you guys the strange house on the street, or was it really accepted where you were?
I think when I was a kid, it was still, because for some time in England, until more recent than people think, it was illegal to host like clairvoyant circles or psychic circles.
Really?
And they would be raided. Yeah. So there was always a bit of not really a hush about it, but it was sort of like, you don't tell people. People would come to the house, I remember, and they would sit in the front room, and I was very young, but I'd make them a cup of tea. I wasn't allowed to use the kettle, of course, so I'd make them a cup of tea using the hot tap, and then stand there and watch them drink it, thinking I was helping.
Well, I am fascinated that was illegal.
Yeah, it was. It was. I can't remember the name of her now, but there was one. She was a famous clairvoyant who went into trance once, and it was quite a big thing because the police raided and they tried to wake her up out of the trance, and she died. Yeah, there was a big thing about it. I can't remember the name of her now, but she was quite famous in England.
Well, after that, I'm sure
that was a long time ago. However,
wow, it still is fascinating me that like everybody's that hung up that that they couldn't do that. So, all right, so you were brought up in this. This becomes your line of work. Did you do something else, or you just went right into this?
No. I this is I suppose for many teenagers, especially growing up, I suppose turning to witchcraft could be viewed as a rebellion against the family. Mine was very different. I rebelled by becoming an archaeologist.
Oh, wow. I thought you were going to say a Christian. No. Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah, but even then, it never really, I never really lost it. I couldn't really escape it. It was always there, this sort of imbalance because of it. And then fate intervened in a sense, and I'm back doing what I started again.
Yes, you had to try something else. So now I have to take an offshoot and ask you a little bit about the archaeology field, which is, did you ever? And of course, I picture you like Indiana Jones in a hat digging stuff up. It's very glamorous in my mind. Did you ever get feelings or vibrations off objects and get images like what is that called? Psychometry.
Sort of. Yes. Where we would camp in our tents was a ancient Saxon burial ground. And oftentimes you'll find the molehills that would be brought up in front of your tent. If you look through the molehill, you'll often find a human remain. So my kitchen at home had lots of bits of unstratified human remains. Just in the different drawers, there were bits of
bits of who knows.
I did once. I had it was a country lane that led to the campsite, and it was a specific spot on my way cutting through a field, and all of a sudden I heard the galloping of hooves, like strong, like I thought a horse is going to charge me. I was like, at the time I thought there's no horse in this field. I remember there's no horse in this field. And I could hear someone's like shouting. And it was getting closer, and it got to the point. It felt so close, and it was so dark that I just ducked down and kind of covered my head because I thought I'm going to get like. Well, the following year, however, we dug on that field, and around that area we found a horse burial there of a Saxon horse that someone had in the graveyard. They were buried with their horse. It was the idea of a bit like someone being buried with their car in a way. It was a very valuable item. That was. I think I actually used to, even then I used to get I used to have a nickname. They used to call me Radagast because there was so many animals. Like I used to have a mouse that lived in my tent and a toad and. Pigeons. There was a pigeon that took a shine to me one year, and it just would. I used to walk around with it. So even then, as an archaeologist, I still I still couldn't escape it.
Hey, why are all their crows lined up on your tent? Well, it just happens wherever I go.
Yeah.
There's a murder of crows wherever I go. So now I have to segue into, everybody knows one of my favorite topics, fae or fairies. I had and we're going to get into a witchcraft topic later. I had a bad experience with what I believe was a fairy. I'm not positive. It's actually going to turn out to be my next comedy special because it was quite an interesting story.
Right.
But what is your, do you like, I have the show respect and leave them alone theory on fairies. Do you have the same?
No, very much the same, actually. Even the term fairy really is a strange one to call them, for me at least. I call them the other, usually. There's too many insults, accidental insults. There's too much really there to that could go wrong. And many people I've noticed, many people, they love the other folk, they love fae and stuff. But I personally, for me, it's I'd leave them alone.
Yeah, they can be very troublesome if they're angry.
Yes, very. I think the one of the best ways for me, I found, was just I used to carry a rucksack with me as I went through the forest that would in England that backed onto my house, and I would just go and pick up litter. It's a really simple thing, but I think that's a really simple way to show sort of respect, especially for nature spirits of all kinds, really.
Oh, I love that. Just picking up litter. I know a friend where when I did a reading for her, I could see a very, very tall fairy in her garden that protected the garden because she said she would sit and say, "I love you" to the plants. And so but I love that, picking up litter. Now, do you differentiate between elementals and fae, or you kind of put them in the same category?
You know, the strange thing about this is elementals. I have always envisioned elementals as something different, but also something that is more
organized,
primordial, I suppose. In one way, to be honest, always, when someone says like elemental beings, my mind always turns to some sort of dragon. Even when like if you are open, like you cast a circle, and you may call to the four quarters or the elements or whatever. I always envision some kind of big worm sort of creature. No matter what, has always been there, like at the front of my mind whenever I do it.
Oh, so in other words, in front of your, when you cast your circle in front, there's always sort of a snake there that's your elemental sort of earth spirit.
Yeah. It's there's a lot of things about snakes with me. They keep turning up a lot, and they're in my sort of logo, my shop logo, and things like that. They're everywhere.
Well, I have a book on symbols, and even in tarot and the magician, we forget that the snake is not, the serpent wasn't bad at that time as a symbol, or the snake eating itself. But it's funny because I'm probably going to throw a lot of questions at you. Feel free to go, I don't know. But I just had someone that did my astrology, because I always end up in haunted places, or I'm in a place now that has different things. And a psychic came over and she said, I feel like there's snakes all over the floor. And she wasn't like they were bad. She was like, it's just this energy that you seem okay with that is in here. Yeah. And someone did my astrology and she was like, well, yeah, in your home, you have like the underworld and the wild card. She's like, you're the problem. Where you go isn't the problem. You're the problem. Which I'm starting to think, but I have So, I read tarot in my place, and I just recently sort of got what I call a psychic upgrade. And when I close my eyes at night, I see different beings that are neither angels or demons, or I don't know if they're fairies, but they're completely different. I try to draw them, but there's a lot of stuff out there, isn't there?
There is. That's one of the things that I seem to draw towards me are things that I can't always identify what they are. Especially, this sounds strange, but the thing is, when I was in England, I knew certain entities around me and local sort of familiars that I would work with, some of them. But then when I came to America, I performed rites of offering, calling in certain entities that, and some of them I still have no idea what they are. No idea what they are. So I just give them names and like, that's fine.
Wow. Yeah. All right. So we're going to get back to that, to the working, especially working with familiars. But is it just that I got an upgrade, or does it seem like all of a sudden everything sort of popped open? Or
Yes.
So we're just in it now.
Yes. Yeah. Something is shifting. I'm not sure what.
Right.
But I'm not sure what, but I've noticed it, and I was told about it by, funnily enough, one of my aunts, one of the ladies who raised me, my aunts. She often would say that there is a change coming, and there is a form of, I suppose, dominion over people and their personal power. In many ways, everything that we perceive through media, it teaches us that we are powerless and we need something. We need to rely on something. And this form of what they call spiritual awakening, it's actually, it's not the awakening as such, it's a reawakening. It hasn't been like this. It never was like this. We were very connected with the world around us. And I think it's coming back to that. The scales are starting to tip again, and I think it's fantastic. It's a wonderful thing. I think it's going to be a little bit of turmoil because a lot of people out there, as you may know, spiritual awakenings and things like this, they're not a walk in the park.
No, there are quite a bit of, I just got done reading for someone, and it's like you have to go through your personal trauma to if you really want. There's some people that just have that psychic gift and they can do it, but I always say I worked at it. I worked very hard at it. I see it as a skill, not a gift, because I study and I meditate and I do all I'm supposed to. But I do think you have to know, you have to be authentic. If you're authentic self, doors will open.
Oh yes, definitely. It's that, I always say the higher self only deals in truths. And I think that's the thing is many people, they condition themselves to not listening to the truths. That they know the truths in many ways about themselves and the changes that are necessary for things, but it's too painful to do alone. They feel, anyways, and I think that's very important, especially when giving someone a reading or something like that. The truth must be conveyed there. That's why they're coming to you, because they not only that, but there's a confirmation that what they feel and what they really know deep down. You're also saying, well, that's true. You have to do it.
Yes. And the other thing I feel like too, and this just kind of makes me sad, and then we'll get on better topics, but I just feel like we are so, the news is not even close. The world, I know most of the people in my country, Biden's in, back to sleep. And it was like, no, the work is not done. The work is not done.
Yeah.
And yes, okay, so I'm going to take a break and then we're going to jump right
Okay.
into archangels because I love this. Okay, folks, we'll be right back. Folks, if you want some laughs, you can check out my CD, Psychic Stand Up Valentine's Edition. You can get it on my website for $5. It's me reading tarot for a comedy crowd. It's funny and interesting and different. And if you don't have any money, go find it on YouTube and go watch it for free. I just want you all to laugh. Also, if you're looking to sharpen your intuition or some really great classes, I'm back in touch with my friend Derek at mysticalwares.net. He is putting up some free classes for the Mystical Wares website. So we got something for everybody. We got a comedy CD and we got all kinds of classes. Thanks and enjoy the rest of the podcast. Okay, so now someone sent me your TikTok, which and this was the first one they sent me. And I loved it. And it was about archangels. Now, give everybody a little, like, what that was about, like, why it struck me so much. Because people are like, oh, the angels are helping me. Not exactly right?
No. So basically, it's a little bit of advice before, if anyone's thinking of working with angels or calling upon angels, that they are, I liken them to a giant piece of moldavite.
Which is a crystal, right? I didn't know that one.
Which is a crystal that recently is trending as this thing that can create a lot of chaotic change, a bit like the Tower card, in people's lives, but for good. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of, some people got a bit upset because I said they're like sociopaths, or they're social, and some people would be upset there, but in a sense, it is kind of true. The point is they have never been human. Mm-hmm. They don't really understand or empathize with what is human. All they care about is your higher self, your spiritual progression, and they will they will destroy everything in your life that is stopping you from getting where you need to be fast to do that.
I think I have a good example of this because I was thinking about this today. Is it like if it was up to my higher self to be more psychic, my guides would force me to sit down and meditate or push me that way, whereas an archangel might throw me into a car accident where I bang my head and get it like that?
Yeah, pretty much. Like, well, this is a distraction, so we don't need this, and you don't need that. You don't need this either. Whereas guides much more gentle. I feel they empathise. They have had human experiences and lives, and they understand your progression. They're there to sort of coax you rather than just give you a good shove.
Yes, and I sent this to my friends because I think, okay, I've always felt like I had a connection to Archangel Michael. And in my paranormal work, I've been somebody's watching out for me. And I feel like that he doesn't make me nervous because that feels very straightforward. Protection, help, now. You know what I mean? Like, the other ones feel more complicated.
The others are much more complicated. I know what you mean about Michael, and people have said this before. It's a much more familiar sort of feeling. There is this genuine need to protect, this want to protect in a way, rather than just like, well, you'll be all right in the end. For me, one of the angels for me that stands out the most is Metatron. Purely because I don't see Metatron as like this angel. But I see it as almost a consciousness. Something. It's not of the same form that other angels would be, if that makes sense. Now, I'm no expert on angels by any means, but I know when during a reading someone once asked if there is something about an angelic entity, and then this thing came into the room, and there's a bit of a long-running joke about this because of the way I described it. But what I feel is it's rather an overpowering sort of oppressive energy that sort of like it just fills the room almost. But there's this taste this sort of no, everyone laughed at me, but I said, you know, when you lick a television screen, like the old television screen,
Okay.
and everyone was like, no, and then one person was like, yes. I was like, well, thank goodness, it's not just me who's ever licked a television screen. So, but that weird sort of dusty, metallic, plasticky taste on the tongue, that's the kind of thing that happens whenever there's a weird angelic. To be honest, I try and stay away from it as much as possible. Because once, especially if I'm doing a live readings, and someone asks for sort of like anything to do with an angel, or if there's an angel, and I try and bring an angel through if there's one there. That's it. Everyone else leaves, and the angel just stays there, just hanging around, and it's like, great, that's fantastic. I can't think of anything else now because there's just this sort of, yeah.
You know, that's so interesting because I think so. I got very stuck on Archangel Gabriel. I was watching these, they were sort of Christian-y videos, so that's okay. They were using the Bible and what was said and this and that, which is, give or take wherever you are. Sometimes I'm with it, sometimes I'm not. But when they started to describe Gabriel, and I have this theory of even the things like I told you that I see sometimes, they're not they're not in our consciousness. So, which can automatically make them scary. But if you didn't know what a dog looked like, and I started to describe to you this thing with sharp teeth and a long nose, you'd be frightened. So they talked about two people that had seen Archangel Gabriel, and one of them was Daniel. And Daniel was terrified for days after seeing the archangel, and there was some strange description. And the other one was Muhammad, who they said spent 3 days in bed because he was so afraid because he didn't know what to make of it. So that it's not just the energy; it's like, what do these look like?
It really is. They're not they're not what you see on the Christmas cards. That My theory about that is very much along the same lines of goetic spirits, because I think they are their counterparts in a sense. They're not demons. It's just a mistranslation from the Greek word daemon to mean spirit. But they exist in. I made a video about it, but basically there is what I see as a endless ocean of conscious thought. Of every aspiration, every emotion, every thought, every inspiration is within this ocean, like a primordial waters. And within it dwell things like the goetic spirits. They are made of forms that they are not. They take on the forms that appeal to them, in a sense. And this is why many of the times with goetic spirits as well, you'll have like the head of a lion with like 8 legs or whatever like this. But when you're seeing it, it's very different from a picture of that.
Right.
And I think that's something else there as well, that it's this calling on something that is not from this realm, this plane of existence. And then people, the mind cannot comprehend what it sees exactly. And I think sometimes the mind fills in things that are closest to what it can see in a way.
I have a deal with my spirit guides that they're supposed to look like humans.
Yeah.
And my head guide looks like the emperor. That's it.
Do they ever appear to you like really big though?
You know what's interesting? I don't know that they do, but I have this new meditation that I was doing that I kind of had to empower myself because things started to get sticky, for lack of a long story. And there I went through. Now I cleanse the 7 layers of my aura. Then I sit in gold light, and then I play that song by Peter Gabriel that he wrote about God called "In Your Eyes," and it was sort of dedicated to God. And then one day I said, "This." I listened to the song as part of respect for all. And all of a sudden, they blew me up till I was like 20 feet tall. And I was like, I guess, I don't know if they gave me space or they were like, oh, you got it. You got it. That's what it's about, kind of thing.
That's good. I think that's what that could mean there is that bloke, because I have this thing of there are many more aspects than just the spirit that we have. The past life spirits, for instance, and is the accumulative knowledge of these spirits is a separate entity that is attached to us. But we don't have access to those memories and that experiences, because if we did, then living this life that we have now, we would avoid every obstacle because we would know better, and then we wouldn't learn.
Right.
But that then is also linked to a third facet, if you like, of the soul, which is what I call the shard. I call it the shard, but because I think of it as like a green shard for some reason, but which is the universe. That we are all made of the universe, and the moment the universe was born, it basically was created out of consciousness. And the moment it became conscious, it like any consciousness, it expanded. And first thing it wanted to do was understand itself. And I see that all life, not just this, but all life, as in we are a small fragment of the universe experiencing itself to gain understanding, almost as if we are a electrical impulse being sent down the nervous system, and then to get knowledge, and then ascend and receive back towards the source or the brain. That's how I see it. And that third aspect of the soul there, that's, I think, is something that you can achieve when you get, it's almost, it puts you into that. It reminded me of that when you said you were like, you felt all of a sudden you just kind of blew up to 20 feet tall. That's that connection all of a sudden with everything, that oneness.
Ah, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense. And back one note with the angelic realm, where do you see, like, how does the demonic and the angelic realm, do they work together? I did a podcast. There was a problem, a little problem after, but we did a friend of mine did a channeling. It wasn't a huge problem, but she channeled the demon, and I felt like the demon didn't lie to us about the balance between almost light and dark, the angelic and the demons. Like, are they sort of on the same, I don't know how to say it, spectrum? Right.
Yes, I believe so. Personally, I think they are. It's the same within. You see, many people focus on the light within, and that's fine. But that's the point of what people are doing now. You know, shadow work is, it's not just about the light. You must embrace the dark instead of casting it out, instead of banishing it. It exists so that you may strive to live in the light. It takes the burden, it takes the stress, it takes the negativity, and the conditioning and trauma that you may have in your life. And I think it's the same for the demonic entities and angelic. When I say demonic, I do mean like the goetic forms of demonic, because I believe what other people perceive as demons that harass and possess people to cause harm, I believe this is something else. I think that this is basically the same as a haunting. When something is soaked in energy, and there is a concentration of energy, especially negative energy, I believe over time it can form consciousness. It can form image. And I think a lot of the times this is what it is.
The thought form.
It's the thought form of the demon. Because personally for me, quote, demonic entities have always seemed to be, there's this whole thing about, like, if you say, like in the Book of Solomon, that demons can be summoned through the Solomonic seal and the triangle of art. But this is a different age we live in. And these demons are recorded to be very angry and very hostile towards the person who summons them and keeps them in the triangle of art. Now, if you were sitting there watching Netflix, eating a bowl of Cheetos or something in your pajamas, and all of a sudden you just found yourself in some sort of summoners or magician's triangle of art, and they're saying, I want you to tell me this, and you're going to tell me this, I'll tell them where to shove it. I wouldn't be very happy myself. And I think it's that point now where people are realizing that you don't need all of these things. They are actually willing to help because they are the other side of the spectrum almost. They are also there to help.
Yes. And there's, that's the part I think people, they used to be teachers.
Yeah. Yes. A lot of them, I think, were once deities. In many senses, it just gets crossed over. Ancient times, and a form comes to someone or an entity comes to someone, they're going to start worshipping it as a deity. And in a true goetics nature, they're not going to stop them because that's one of the things that they like is recognition. They like recognition, basically. In any way, really, just by saying, this, I spoke to them and they helped me.
They're like little influencers, little YouTube influencers.
Exactly. It's through word of mouth. They get business.
What, too? I think there's exactly when you were talking about thought forms, I think there's a lower level of chaos also. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I do think so.
Those are the hard ones, the chaos, because there's no negotiating.
No, there isn't. There's nothing that can really be done there. They won't stop in that sense.
Yes, I have to tell you, I because of this podcast, and I do paranormal. I help people that have haunted houses and stuff. The other day, I got an email, and I still don't know. They said, "Can you help us out? I live in a house. Someone died suddenly, and their sisters came in and tried to use a Ouija board to contact them in the same room where my brother had been doing black magic. And now we think he's watching us at night." And I was like, have you seen any horror movies? Have you seen, and not one that would tell you no everything.
There's no instinct there. At some point, it was at this point when I thought I should stop.
Exactly. It was like, and I actually I sent them to someone that could help them because I wasn't taking on that one because that one feels like, no, you might want to work that out yourself. But I have a friend that does really great work with that kind of stuff. So I said, but she says she haven't heard from them yet. And there's a part of me that was like, was that a hoax? Because either that was a hoax or those were the dumbest people I've ever met.
Really, though. Yeah. It's... Oh, look, there's a fire. Let me pour some petrol on it. Just pour some gasoline on it. Yeah.
All right, let's take a break real quick, and then I want to talk about your readings and that you do tarot, and then you're throwing some things that are like chicken bones, and I don't know what they are, but I think that's how my accountant does my taxes. So hold on a second. We're going to find out if Elwynn can do our taxes. Hang on, everybody.
Psychic teas, spelled with a Z, are scrumptious herbal combinations with antiviral and anti-inflammatory properties. Without sugar or caffeine, psychic teas won't mess with any medications and are designed by a naturopathic doctor. Many testify to positive results. Detox chakras and psychic tea blends enable bodily functions with superior efficacy, while more love and champagne blends support awareness of subtle joy and bliss. The CBD's teas are magical with myriad healing effects. There are 20 servings per package. A little dab'll do ya, and you can drink it hot or cold. Psychic teas taste so good. Replace coffee, use as a bedtime ritual, or even flavor a meal or dessert. The people behind the product are righteous and kind. Psychic teas will blow your mind. Totally worth the investment. Psychic teas with a Z.com.
So now you do tarot readings for people, correct?
I do, yes.
And
yes.
you have some of the cool. Do you? I'm a Rider-Waite girl. That's it. I have an Oracle deck. I have maybe something else to add on, but I love the Rider-Waite. But you're using all kinds of decks, aren't you?
I do. I get drawn to a deck for different people. Rider-Waite was actually what I started with, and growing up, because of the way I was taught, and I was taught on Rider-Waite, I thought that there was no other decks. that was it. And someone once said, "Well, have you tried another deck?" And it almost felt like I would be like my aunt who taught me, betraying. And then I I got another tarot deck, and I used it, and instantaneously I could read it so much easier. And I thought, all this time, it's about finding what works for you, isn't it? Like, yeah.
Yeah, somebody gave me an Oracle deck, and it just works. But you know what's funny? I also went all the way out of my way to buy what I believe is the Italian deck way back.
Oh, yes.
And I can't remember the name. And I was like so excited that I got it, and then I opened it. Can't read it in English. Never mind.
I almost did the same thing. It was one of those decks where they made 500 decks using the old print, and as I was looking through it, I was like, "This is gorgeous. This is going to be so good. This is going to be so good." And as I'm looking through it online at the different, they've got all the deck laid out. One of them was this man holding, like, it's a very obviously medieval sort of sketch engraving picture of this man holding a baby over a fire. And I remember looking at it and thinking, probably not. Probably not. What do you say if you pull that card out? Be like, are you going to a barbecue? Or, what do you say? So I thought, no, I'll stick with what I got.
I know. And you know what else? I couldn't read it. I couldn't figure out the Roman numerals. I was like, are these wands or these cups? What are these? So sometimes, but also, so you're doing something else in your TikTok. What is this called? What is this? What is that? I'll let you answer before I say something dumb.
That's right. I call it a bone reading. Some people call it charm reading, casting bones. It's not just bones. However, there are things that I've collected that either at a time where I was feeling the emotion that's attached to it, or what it resonates to me and what it means. Each item has a different meaning depending on where it's situated with the other pieces and where it laid on the board as well. So yeah, there's many different things there.
And the board has like 3 circles on it, right? Like
the Triskel, yes, yeah. The 3 there is there's many different meanings to the 3. it's a very special number in many ways. But the three there, it can often mean, like, the first one is the mundane material world, and anything that lands on that is usually to do with that. The second being the spirit realm or spiritual progression, and the third can often mean as in divinity, but more about the future and, like, sort of fixed paths along soul contract wise and things like that. But when I just do it, and it's always been like this, when I do it, the pieces move in my mind. They all move in different ways. They swirl around each other, and some move towards each other.
You mean by the way you toss it, or you literally kind of close your eyes and see that?
Oh no! As I'm looking at them, I see them kind of. It's almost as though that there is, like, this sounds really strange, but, like, say for instance, there's a piece of citrine I use, and it's sort of, so this yellow thing, and then all of a sudden, like, it's like an outer body. It's as though the citrine is having an outer body experience, and you can see the citrine like move. Like, the solid one is still there, but then I see it moving towards another piece, if you see what I mean.
Wow.
And yeah, and that doesn't always happen, but usually there's a few of them will do that, and these are usually the ones that are saying, like, this needs to, it's got to the point where each one of these pieces that I throw has a personality, and I talk to them quite unashamedly. I talk to them and I tell them off because they keep falling out and going.
They're going rogue.
Yeah.
I wonder, I'm getting a little obsessed with this and I haven't tried it yet, but to me, isn't, like, all right, and this is a huge leap, that reminded me of spoon bending, because spoon bending is, I don't know if it's jumping to the other timeline, but you're seeing the spoon move, which makes it bend.
Yes, it's what happens is, well, I was taught about spoon bending by my aunt, because we were just messing around with it, and she told me that, she said, "Do you know what you're doing?" And I was like, "Trying to make the spoon bend." And she said, "But you see the point there where it wants to bend?" She said, "These are all made of molecules, and these molecules are packed together." She said, "But those molecules are the same molecules that you have, and you're holding the spoon. Therefore, the spoon is you. You are part of that spoon. You must think about that heating up, like, and focus so much on that piece of that spoon heating up that the molecules, you can see them in your mind's eye moving around each other, starting to have space to move." And I did it, and it moved a tiny bit.
Didn't flop right over.
No, it didn't fall straight over. But I remember doing it and thinking, that was pretty cool. But I think that's because we saw, what was his name? Who was the fellow with the
Uri Geller? Yeah.
Uri Geller. I think that's because Uri Geller was on the TV, and we had, like, spoons next to our teacups. So we just started to try.
I went to buy a box of spoons to do that, and I was like, wow, that's really ambitious that you think you would have 20 spoons. You're going to need extra ones.
I'm going to need more spoons.
Start with one. See if you can get one over. And I know a lot of people now, they twist it. They give it a twist. But I have to, there's classes they teach on it and stuff. But I took a parapsychology course where they had one of those spoons. They watched it be bent. I don't know if that's probably not proper English. They watched it bend, and then they took it to a lab, and exactly what you're saying. The guy at the lab said, this spoon has been heated and melted.
Yeah. It's the same way that if you actually bend it with your hands and you keep bending it, and eventually it will snap, because that friction is creating heat that makes it softer in that sense. I just had the strangest intrusive thought when you said that, to be honest. That was something that I've thought before, and I thought to myself, and it is a relevant point. Why is it always spoons that are bent? Why not fork?
I thought that same thing because you know what I thought? I thought, you know why? Because the conscious energy is behind the spoon. So we all think a spoon could bend, so it may be behind there. Now the fork, I want to see each little prong going a different way.
That's true. That would be quite amazing.
It would be the fork spread and the spoon bend.
That would be.
But I think that makes sense. All right. So spoon bending is on my list. Okay. So, and before I forget this, I want to apologize to all my YouTube listeners because I know I always say the show notes and they don't show up. So we're going to give everybody, I know whenever it loads up to YouTube, they just get the podcast. They don't get the show notes. So we'll make sure they have all that at the end. Okay. So being that you grew up in all this, did you ever have anything that really scared you?
That
sounds like a no if you have to say
Yeah, I don't think there was, to be honest. And that's not kind of a macho, not scared of anything. There's plenty of scary things, but I don't think, I think it's the same is that, you know how, children are because they are closer to spirit, because they just come from it. And there isn't all the stress of things as well, and life hasn't sort of kind of muddied up the waters for them in that way. They often see and speak to spirit from a young age. And it's very common that parents will say, who are you talking to? But I think it's in the same way that as a child, I remember the children aren't scared when they talk to spirit. They feel the intent there. I think the only time it took me by surprise more than anything is that I moved house years ago to England, and it was next to this. My back garden backed onto this forest, and that was the reason why I wanted to rent that place, because it was so beautiful. And I remember after 2 or 3 days, no curtains had been put up yet, and I lay on my bed in my bedroom, and there was this man there. He must have been early 20s, and he was there, and his eyes were completely black.
Ooh.
And at first, out the corner of my eye, I thought, oh, it's a spirit person. And then when I looked, it wasn't a spirit person. It was a form of a shade or something like that.
Like a shadow person more?
Like a shadow person that I call them shades. I've noticed them in sort of forested areas and woodlands sometimes. It's almost as though that's where they sort of dwell. And they're not bad. They're more of a neutral thing that just like to be sort of left alone. And they sort of project forms. But I've seen them before, and I sort of felt it, and I was like, I know exactly what this is. And it was just looking. I was been moving boxes the whole day, and I remember just laying on my bed, and I turned my head, and I saw it, and I just said, "Oh, piss off!" And it did. It just left. But
that was so English. Piss off.
I know. I think on any other day, I probably would have jumped a bit, but I was so tired that day. I was just like, I can't be dealing with this.
It's funny because I moved into the apartment I'm living in now that I'm trying to get out of. First of all, everything, I don't know why, maybe this is a fairy, but everything water breaks in this apartment. The water heater broke, the faucets break, the refrigerator was putting out water. Everything is about water in this apartment. And I keep telling it, hang on, I'm trying to leave, don't worry. But when I first moved in, I had known that the lady died in here, but that didn't freak me out. And I remember the first night my dog was sick, and I remember a door opened on its own, and I was like, I'm just too tired. Now, if that happened now, I would freak out. But exactly what you say, like I'm just too tired. And then I found out the lady that lived here before me was almost exactly like me. Vegan. I get her animal rights mail. I get her Save the Horses mail.
Oh, really?
And I think she was there, like, trying to help the dog. And I was like, just leave everything alone. You know what I love, though, about your, like I said, the Archangel one really struck me because you're not afraid to say things that might not be popular. And when you said sociopath, I got it. It didn't mean they were serial killers. It meant they didn't have the same spectrum of feelings we do.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And you did another one on twin flames that I loved. And twin flames seem to be meeting very much now. Can you sort of explain to people the difference between a twin flame and a soulmate?
Well, a twin flame, you're going to envisage that they are two souls that are forged within the same celestial fires. In a way, they share that same spark. Now, in the context of this life, this material world we live in, they are often drawn together. But the reason behind why they can be drawn together gets kind of, there's some misinformation in some ways. Now, it's not that twin flames never work. They do. But it takes a lot more work, and that's the point. They will come and they will clash, and they will be drawn together, crossing over. These paths will cross over and over again. They learn something from each other, usually in the form of pain, because at the end of the day, this is the world's, or the universe's most efficient technique of teaching. Yeah. And so they will learn from each other, and oftentimes one will project what the other needs or what the other does not wish to address about themselves. So they will clash, they will come apart, they will carry on their path, and then they will clash again, and this can carry on their whole lives. Until eventually they are both, basically they drop the ego. Now, when I say ego, I don't mean the arrogance or vanity. I just mean the earthly ego. They drop such things. Instead, they are more comfortable in their spirit sense, their spiritual identity. Because this is basically what twin flames are about. It's they appeal to each other's spiritual identity. However, they may not be progressed or evolved enough to actually make that work together. Whereas personally for me, I like soulmates. I'm a romantic, and I think there's something even more special about choosing someone and choosing to walk beside someone, regardless of how tough and how rough the sailing may be. You're choosing that thing, that person and that path. And I think that's not that twin flames are bad, but for me personally, soulmates.
Yeah, because soulmates feel like you're getting to know this person in this life sort of thing, even though you probably know them a little. And I always say, soulmates can be the people that teach us lessons too that are not good. But if you could have twin soul sex with a soulmate, you win.
Yeah.
Because that is the one thing, the chemistry and the fire and the passion that people find. And unfortunately, I always feel like that twin soul is the one they thought got away, or there's something about it they regret not having it work out. When I think as you get older, you see a soulmate situation is so much better.
It is. That's the point. A twin flame is something, it burns too bright. And it's not good really in the long run. I agree.
Yeah. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming on. I want everybody,
Thank you.
I want you to follow Elwynn on, his website is up, we think. We're trying to get it up. And it is the Antlered Crown, the TheAntlered Crowned, CROWNED, right?
No, just CROWN.com.
Okay, so the antler, I'm going to let you do it, and here's why. I went over to my notes to look at it, and I had written it 4 different ways, and as I was saying it, I was like, all right, just mix all 4 of them and see what happens. Please spell it for everyone.
All right, theantlercrown.com is TheAntleredCrown.com.
Okay, now I got it right. And it will be correct in the show notes, ladies and gentlemen. And also, you can find Elwynn the Witch on Instagram, or you can find the Antlered Crown spelled the same on TikTok. If not, go to my Instagram and he'll be on there. I will have reposted something from him because I think he's terrific. So people can go there. They can get readings and readings and that throwy thing you told about. What else?
Yep, I do bone readings, tarot readings, spiritual consultations, also live consultations on Zoom as well that can be scheduled, and clairvoyant connections as well.
Wonderful. What a pleasure to meet you, my dear.
Pleasure to meet you too.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to the podcast. Thanks for Mike at Uno Rising Media. I think that's all I have to say. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.